Good afternoon, everyone. We're going to call the meeting to order with the first item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes from our previous meeting. I'd like to entertain a motion for its approval.
Move it.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor? Aye.
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 Aye. Thank you. So the minutes have been approved unanimously, and we're going to ask Ms. Rogers if she would take us through the balance of the agenda.
Thank you very much, Mr. Williams. So the next item on the agenda is the security listing. This is from the period of April 21st, 2025 through June 13th, 2025. The amount for purchases during this time period was $320 million. The redemptions was $63,731,996.66. Are there any questions?
Are there any questions? Hearing none, I'd like to entertain a motion for approval of both the purchases and the redemptions.
So moved.
So moved.
It's been moved
Second.
and seconded. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Aye. That motion is passed. Ms. Rogers.
Okay, the next item is the SWAT profile, and this is covering May 31st, 2025. And the total of the market value is $9,292,809 compared to the previous report, which was as of March 31st, 2025. It's $8,198,009. The 10-year Treasury moved from 4.23% to 4.41%. I just want to call your attention that on the 1st of July of 2025, the smaller piece of the UBS will be fully matured, and so then we will be down to 2 swaps in our portfolio.
Any discussion? Thank you. We can now move to the next item.
Okay, thank you. So today on the agenda, we do have 2 financings. The first one is through the WIFIA program, and this will be the 3rd financing for our water and wastewater capital projects. The WIFIA program is administered through the Environmental Protection Agency. This financing will fund approximately 5 projects, cost totaling of $166.4 million. Because this is a senior lien, we will need to fund our debt service reserve fund, which is approximately $12 million. This is typically funded with borrowed proceeds, similar to how we do in our public offering. The other option would be for the DPW to find cash within their utilities to fund the debt service reserve fund. So our practice is we finance the debt service reserve fund. So the other cost includes $300,000 in application fees. We also have additional funding for contingencies to cover any potential increases in the project cost. So the total amount of finance is $184.7 million. This will be a fixed rate debt, and we'll be using the slug market to benchmark the interest on the loan with adding an additional 1 basis point. The WIFIA program requires that the borrowing be rated by 2 nationally recognized rating agencies before we can disperse the funds. So at that point, right now we're going to do a dry offering, which will allow us to set the interest rate. The next time the city does a public offering, we will include this rating in our request. We anticipate this will occur, the next offering for the utilities, around the 3rd quarter of FY 2026. Additionally, EPA does charge us an administrative fee between $12,000 to $15,000. So in this resolution, we're asking for the issuance and delivery of the project revenue bonds, setting a maximum project amount of $105 million with a not-to-exceed interest rate of 5.5%. Approving the 38 supplemental bond resolution to issue this as a private placement with EPA and appoint M&T/Wilmington Trust as the trustee, registrar, and paying agent for the bonds. Any questions? Yes.
Yes, sir.
This is my acronym check. In the sources and uses, well, I guess technically uses, one of the lines is back out SRF. What is SRF?
Oh, those are the funds from the Maryland revolving loan fund. Yes.
Okay, all right,
Oh,
okay.
I have a question.
Yes.
Counselor Shelton has informed me that it's in the bond agreement, but how is the debt reserve fund, presumably it's drawn down, how is it invested? Bob indicated it's according to what the trustee does. And I'm reading Section 8 of the bond indenture, which sort of clouds it a little bit in my mind. But
Yes, so we make the selection of how the bonds are invested, so they either be
you
in.
make the selection.
Yes, yes.
And
You know what, that's why I'm not the lawyer.
okay. And maybe this is a silly question, but how much money in the aggregate is in all the debt reserve funds that we have? And is it included in the cash balances that we periodically see?
Can I make a point, however? The type of investments you can make, you may be able to select, but the type of investments are restricted. Is that not correct?
Well, you just asked two very different questions.
Yes.
Why don't we do one at a time?
Okay, so the investments are restricted for the debt service reserve fund. Some of them are invested in agencies, some of them invested in money market. And it depends on, I think the debt service reserve fund, those are normally invested in agencies because that money is not as liquid versus the other funds, the debt service fund as well as the construction funds are in money market.
Are they not restricted in terms of the type of investments you can make?
Restricted in the type of investments?
Yeah. You can invest it in
Yeah.
anything you
Yeah,
want.
our investment policy.
Our investment
is-
policy dictates how much, what are permitted investments.
Is that not restricted in any of the indentures? Must be.
That's right, that's right, that's right. And we just recently had the board review and approve our investment
Apart from your
policy.
policy, you just can't decide to speculate in it.
Of course, of course.
No, we're not.
Oh, yeah,
There's somebody-
please, please, please.
I'm looking for some backup.
Absolutely.
You're correct,
You
if I may.
have to come up to the mic.
Thank you. If I may, thank you, Janelle. Is that the bond resolution, which acts as our indenture?
Would you identify yourself?
Oh, yes,
Because
hello,
you're
I'm
on
Kimberly
camera.
Min.
This is
Oh,
being
hi.
broadcast.
I am bond counsel for the city's water wastewater infrastructure program. So the bond indenture, which is our bond resolution, provides for a list of permitted investments, which are also, just generally defined as very, very safe in general. And then what happens is the city pretty much layers its investment policy on top of that. So you take the restriction of the permitted investments under the indenture, and then the city would look to its investment policy to decide how it invests within that.
Okay.
So now we're all happy.
Well, so there must be a considerable amount of money in so-called reserve funds.
Yes.
How much is it? And when we see the general balances of the city, in the working account, is that included, or I would assume it's excluded?
It's excluded. It's with the trustees, so it's not commingled with the
Yeah, no,
city
okay,
funds.
yeah, which makes sense. But how much is in, and just as a matter of curiosity, we've issued a lot of bonds.
Yeah,
A lot of water and wastewater bonds where there's got to be escrows. How much money is it, is in the debt reserve? It's gotta be,
Yeah, I would have to get you the number, the exact
Okay.
number.
it's gotta be a couple $100 million.
Yes.
Yeah.
And every year annually, we look at it and we evaluate how much should be held in there for the maximum and debt services should be held according to the
Well,
indenture.
it's just,
Yeah.
look, it's, no, I'm not any great import, but I was thinking to myself, it's a significant number.
Truth to tell.
And the interest, and
Mr. Meyer would like to get his hands on it.
Well, Mr. Meyer may or may not, but
But here's someone who would.
But it's not going to happen.
Mr. Controller.
And the interest earnings from those
that,
funds.
that's the question I want to ask is, where are the interest on those required debt service reserves? Does the interest have to stay in the reserve fund? No, it doesn't.
I didn't think so.
Yeah, so the interest, I assume, goes into the general fund?
No, so what happens is if there's an overfunding in the debt service reserve fund, we transfer that over to the other debt service reserve fund, which makes it brings down our cost of paying debt service.
Okay.
So you get a
So
credit.
even though we appropriate the money, so instead of pulling, if we have like $1 million extra, it goes to that debt service account,
It
and
goes
we
into-
actually,
It defrays the interest expense on
Right.
another,
You
yes.
get a credit for it.
okay.
Okay.
So the only time it will probably actually come back to the city if after we paid off a loan, a bond series.
I do get a credit.
And if we
But
don't
you don't
use
go
it
in-
towards other projects, then
I
that
go to
comes
head of
back
the
into the
class,
city.
Well, you can
Okay.
be at the head of
It
the
goes
class.
back into
Well, it just
utilities
occurred
rather.
to
I'm
me.
gonna.
It doesn't go in the
I'm-
general fund, it goes to the,
I hear you.
DPW.
I hear you. I get that. I'm going to play Woodward and Bernstein a little bit later, though. I think there's more money following to go there, but I don't think that we need to do it right this second. So, okay, I got you. You've answered his question to my satisfaction, so I'm good for now. Okay.
I'm happy for you.
Yeah, there you go. Okay.
All right.
Any other questions?
No.
Ms. Rogers, anything else?
That's it for that one, so entertain a motion.
So is there a motion for the authorization
So moved.
and the issuance?
So moved.
It's been moved
Second?
and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? No abstentions? That motion passed. Thank you.
Okay.
Has dealing with the EPA changed at all?
Yeah, one of the leads on there did retire, so we have a couple of new people that transitioned onto the financing team. Yeah.
Okay. Never mind. Just
Okay, ready? Go on to the next item, which is the general obligation bond financing. And we're requesting the board to approve the Series 2025 general obligation bond sale. The total amount of projects is $103,865,000. Based on our preliminary run of our sources and uses, we project there may be a $3.9 million in premium, which we will use to downsize the borrowing. And approximately 1 million of it, we have approximately 1 million in cost of issuance, which the city will contribute $220,000 on the taxable side. We will offer the bonds as a competitive sale, but the resolution does include the flexibility to convert to negotiated sale. To be proactive, we thought it would be prudent to include this flexibility during this time because of the volatility and the uncertainty in the market. And this will give us the option to hire an underwriter to help us to market the bonds and to structure it, the timing and the marketing of the bonds. So this resolution also authorizes the sale of no more than $105 million in bonds. It sets the maximum interest rate at 5.17% for taxable and 6.43% for 5.17 for tax exempt and 6.43 for taxable. It authorizes distribution of the preliminary official statement and the final official statement and the notice of sale. It appoints Wilmington Trust as our bond registrar, paying agent, and authenticating agent for the bonds, and DTC will serve as a security depository for the bonds. And so what I do want to note too, that the last time we actually sold general obligation bonds was in 2022. So this $103 million represents 2 cycles of borrowing for us.
I have a question. The underwriters will help you determine whether it should be a negotiated sale or bids. And then who makes the final decision?
On whether it will be negotiated,
Correct.
Treasury manager will, finance will.
Meaning what? Meaning you?
Yeah, yeah, we'll
Yes.
decide together, that's right.
The board? Or you?
No,
You and
so the
Bill.
board, so the resolution is actually giving, the board's giving us authority to determine whether we will
What
do
I
a
want to
negotiation.
do is, who ultimately makes the decision? You and Bill?
No.
It's the Department of Finance.
Department of Finance. which would be
I'm sorry,
myself and
how
the
did I come
director.
into
So
this?
that's kind of clear as mud.
Just, the Department of Finance is Michael and the people who work for Michael.
So Michael, with his subordinates, makes the decision?
Yes,
That's right.
Well, I'm happy with that.
yeah.
Okay. I have a far less consequential question. Why does Wilmington Trust, the bond registrar, haven't historically you used M&T?
Oh, they're the same. So Wilmington is underneath, yeah, underneath M&T. So basically, their corporate financing is Wilmington Trust. That's who does the business for the trustee and escrow agent.
M&T owns Wilmington Trust now?
Yes,
Oh,
yeah,
sorry.
yeah. So our banking services is under M&T, but our bond and escrow, all of that stuff, debt management is underneath Wilmington Trust.
Okay.
Other questions? Yes, Mr. Monroe.
I'm looking at the General Obligation Bond Series 2025 project list, and I was just noting that, I kind of got lost in it.
So did I.
And-
I
and
don't understand.
I started to see a lot of the same things repeated.
Yes.
And it was a little unclear why, like, how, can you walk us through this chart?
Yes, so what you have here, like the 31st Community Development, First Cultural Institution, those are the authorizations, right, that are approved.
So those are individual bond appropriations that are on the
Right.
on the ballot.
And then on
Okay.
each of those, we have the projects. So you have some projects that will actually ladder between different authorizations. So after they run out of money underneath one, then they move to the next authorization. So like the 30th Community Development, 31st. So they might have started their funding underneath the 30th Community Development. They run out of money there, and then they roll over to the 31st Community
Okay.
Development.
So that's why I can see Southeast Community Action Center listed under third public building, but also listed under first public infrastructure.
Correct.
Okay, even though it's the same amount of money, that's not the same thing. It's just they got a chunk of money that size from multiple bonds.
That's correct.
Okay,
But
gotcha.
multiple, well, not necessarily multiple bonds, but multiple authorizations to issue those bonds.
Right.
Okay. Okay. And then if you have to read the fine print, but under bond issues, they have a big number, but
Okay.
you have to go to the left of that, which, where it says unissued bonds.
Yeah, so the bond issue, normally we have, and let me say that we're transitioning in Workday. So some of the information that we would normally get underneath our capital report that will list out how much bonds we actually issued, we're developing work tags now to bring those into this report. So the title is the same as if we were, that it would denote how much we actually issue for those projects. So that line, what you see is unissued, that's just like telling me to make sure that I don't issue bonds above that authorization, because the first one, let me go to the first page. Okay, the first community development, you see underneath unissued, I only have $1,089,000 to issue there. So this is just tracking to make sure that my total project list does not exceed that amount of
Yeah.
of authority
Yeah,
to issue.
and on page 8, you can kind of see the summary. I think it's helpful.
Yeah, that was very
Well,
helpful.
yeah, that, in fact, that was what made me question, I suspect that part of the reaction I'm having is just, this is a paper report in a particular format.
That's correct.
But all of this information, I assume, is in a database, and if it was asked for organized differently, it could be printed out, organized differently without much difficulty. So, I ask that because if someone wanted to see this by project as opposed to by bond approval, you could see you could see Southeast Community Center, and then you'd see all the different times money was appropriated to it or authorized to it, and you would see like how much of that, it's like you could see in one spot then how much money this project is getting or has gotten over the years.
Right, so, yeah, and that's where we are bringing the work tags in so that we can segregate the funding source. It may not necessarily be like when we issued the bonds, but it'll show you how much was issued underneath that authorization for
Right.
that funding source.
Right, because even this doesn't have dates, it just has concepts like fourth community and economic development.
Right.
Which I think for the purposes I'm envisioning, I think all the information here is sufficient to what I would be looking for. I just need to see it organized differently in order to make use of it. Because like, for the purpose of approving the next chunk of it, this is nice, but it doesn't really let me appreciate the scope by seeing things by project, which is more how I'm, like, I can understand in your world, you
Yeah.
live by bond authorization, but other than the dozen or so of you who think that way, the rest of us think in projects.
Right, and then you were able to pull that project up in
Right,
Workday.
and
see the
look and
different-
see the history
yes.
of that project financially. Could I ask for a report like that?
I don't think we're there yet.
Comptroller, I'll put my other hat on for a second. We've made a lot of progress in the last 6 months to make that possible. We are very close to there. We're not there yet, but I think that we will be there in the next few months.
Okay, yeah, and again, this is not like something I need next week. It's just
Yeah,
that, like, this would be a nice thing to just have, to look through and reference from time to time.
Absolutely.
But it would be nicer if it was organized by project, because that's how people ask me questions.
Okay.
Absolutely, and I understand exactly what you're saying. It's sort of like, it's kind of every project has a life cycle, right? That the project was appropriated, the money eventually gets spent, the bond eventually gets approved under that spending, and the whole thing could theoretically be organized by project if we could make all those links, and we are building out those links, and we're most of the way there right now.
Okay, so when you get there, if you could send this back to the board, but in project order, that would be very greatly appreciated.
Absolutely.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Quick question. What particular projects are taxable?
So the projects, it depends on the use and also the age of the expenditures. So if the expenditure's over 3 years, then they'll be classified as taxable. And then it's also dependent if it's private use in that particular project, it will determine whether we would issue it as a taxable bond.
Over 3 years. Huh.
What's the taxable use? What type of projects have a taxable?
It's more for private usage. So it's more, part of it is for the public, and the other part is private use.
Maybe I could expand on it a little bit.
Yeah.
My name is Paul Shelton with Bond Counsel for the Taxable and Tax-Exempt GO
Hello,
bonds.
Paul.
Mr. Shelton, how are you?
Good, and you?
Mr. Shelton and I are not related, but we share a name.
I used to work for Mr. Shelton.
I used to work for Mr. Shelton, is right. What happens for now, because you haven't issued bonds since 2022, you're really knocking on the 3-year door. So unfortunately, that's going to shift more of your projects to being taxable. The tax law says it's 18 months or later of, 18 months since the last expenditure, 18 months since the project was put in use, but no later than 3 years. And so unfortunately, when you don't issue every year, you sort of push more expenditures on the taxable side. But as we're looking at it now, it's still not far off from what you normally do. So it's probably going to be about 2/3 tax exempt and maybe 1/3 taxable. And primarily, as Janelle said, it's not because of the 18-month completion rule. It's the 3 years that absolutely, that's as far back as you can go. The other thing that makes them taxable is simply if you have a use that the IRS considers sufficient enough or burdensome enough on the city side that the private party is exercising control. And a lot of times, I won't go into the details of that. It could be a management agreement. It could be an exclusive use. It could be a lot of reasons. So what Janelle and we do is we look at each project, each expenditure, and we determine what the private use is, if any. And we look at who's using it, what kind of contracts are there, what kind of leases are in place on that piece of property. And so we make a thorough review of each item before we decide whether it's in the taxable side or the tax exempt side. Our goal is always, if we can, to make everything tax exempt, of course. Reduces your cost of borrowing.
I'm very pleased you're now smarter than I am.
Trained by you.
Are there other questions? Hearing no further questions, I'd like to entertain a motion as recommended for the 5 purposes within the resolution. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
I did not hear any opposition. This motion passed unanimously. Ms. Rogers.
And we do not have any other business.
Is there any other business to be brought before us today? Hearing no other business, I'd like to entertain a motion for adjournment.
So moved.
Unanimous consent.
We're now adjourned. Thank you very much.
Thank you.